We are live. Welcome to the Carl Vibe Show. I'm joined today by the Dragon, head of security from Skinwalker Ranch, as well as Michael Mataluni and Pete from the Creepy Little Book. We're going to go ahead and bring everybody on board right off the bat and get everybody introduced. So welcome to the show, and welcome everybody here that's joined us over in the chat as well. This is going to be really awesome. We've got a lot of great people here, and we are interested and fascinated today in the mystery of Skinwalker Ranch and everything going on there. Not so much the show on the History Channel, which is a hit TV show going on over there, but also covering the mysteries of the phenomenon, everything from the paranormal in the sky, UFOs, UAPs, but also portals on the ground, different things opening up, creatures crawling through, and all sorts of events. So welcome to the show, Dragon. Bryant, glad to have you here, head of security. Are you at Skinwalker Ranch right now, my friend?
I am not today. No, I got out of the dirt for the weekend. So
nice.
It's nice to be clean.
To get out of the Skinwalker Ranch and away from all the weirdness and be able to join us for the show today. So Dragon, thanks for joining us. It's a real pleasure. Pete from Creepy Little Book, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do over there and why you're here today?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Pete from the Creepy Little Book, a channel with focus on the fringe and mysterious. We cover everything from the esoteric to the extraterrestrial, from the spiritual to the supernatural, and all that lies between. I'm just a simple dilettante, if you will, an antiquarian of the weird, and I like to collect these strange stories from history that converge between the supernatural and the unexplained and present them in a very simple way for us to enjoy.
Awesome, Pete. So yeah, if you want to check out Pete's channel, he's got all sorts of really cool, mysterious, historical videos over on his channel about the weird and the paranormal and all sorts of stuff. And Michael from the Singularity Lab, thanks for joining us, Mike. Tell us about your channel.
Oh, I could just listen to Pete's vocal all day. That was fantastic.
I was gonna say,
that was fucking great. My name is Michael Mataluni, and I'm the creator of the Singularity Lab, where we focus on, we try to get a little bit weird and focus on future tech and science. And we also delve into UAP and quantum physics, the supernatural, and that sort of fun stuff. So I'm just thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to share the stage with the Dragon and Pete from Creepy Little Book. Carl, take it away.
So you guys, what we're going to talk about today is, there's the TV show, and obviously with non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality, we can't talk about things that are coming up on the show on the History Channel, but we want to talk about a little bit more of the history and the strange connections with everything, and maybe some of our different theories that we have about Skinwalker Ranch. And this is a place where we can get theoretical, philosophical. We can talk about the dimensions of reality and some of our theories about what we individually think is going on. So I would kind of like to start off with that. I think there's a lot of stuff tied to maybe the geology and the history of the location energetically. But first of all, Dragon, I want to get your opinion. You're the man on the ground, the head of security at Skinwalker Ranch. So you're the one that if anything creepy or weird goes on there, they say, grab your shotgun and your radio, and we're going to send you in to go check it out. So what are some of the interesting things that you've encountered there, or maybe not being a person on the ground firsthand, Dragon? What's your thoughts on the place?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting place. As I've said before, 90% of the time, it's just a really cool, fun place to act like I'm, working on a Western movie. And really, at the end of the day, I'm not riding around on a horse, but it's a UTV. So yeah, for the most part, it's just a really cool spot of property in the basin. And that's how it feels most of the time. So, it's that other 10% or 5% or whatever, depending on the time of year, that really, has people interested and lends itself to all the lore and everything that's gone on around there. We've experienced everything from, seeing UFOs, or UAPs is the new term that everyone's using. Having unexplainable injuries happen to people, feeling strange energies, hearing things, voices, individuals having things that they claim follow them home, and they can't explain that, the whole hitchhiker phenomenon. It's definitely one of those things that, you just kind of go in never knowing what to expect. I joke about myself that I'm sort of the phenomenon repellent, because I think as much time as I've spent on that property, I think I've probably experienced the least amount of things that you would consider strange or abnormal or whatever. I don't know what the explanation for that is, but I mean, literally I'll spend weeks and then I'll leave for a few days, and people have all these crazy things happen, or we pick things up on our monitors, or surveillance cameras and things like that. So I joke with the guys. I'm like, well, if you want something to happen, you better send me off to get sandwiches or something, because that's when things seem to happen. But I've had a few of my own strange experiences. I feel at peace with the ranch. Some people don't, and it reacts differently to different individuals. I don't know if it's a mindset thing. I don't know if it's an energy thing. I don't know if it's a frequency type thing. Everything in this world runs on a certain frequency. Had an individual that's what they do is, they basically feel energy and frequency. And they said, I just feel like, you are almost on the same frequency level as the ranch. So maybe that's the reason. Because I've asked, I'm like, what is it about me that's making everybody else have these crazy experiences? Not that I'm inviting hitchhikers or anything in my life. But it's definitely interesting. But, I know the people that worked there and have been there personally. I trust them. I know them. And, and I've also seen things we've captured as well. So there's definitely something going on. I don't know what all is at play. It may just be a big petri dish of all kinds of things. But it's definitely, one of those places where going into it, I told Brandon he was nuts for buying, this piece of dirt in the middle of the basin. And, here I am smack dab in the middle of it.
So were you a skeptic going in, Dragon?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I'd never really experienced anything, or, you hear stories, but I had never, had any kind of an experience on that level to where I thought that there was anything to it, and, you grow up in mainstream culture where it's just a bunch of movies and, hoo-ha, and it's been really fun, as of late, especially the past few years, to see this sort of thing, come to light and more into the mainstream, where it's like, we're not brushing this sort of thing under the carpet and making it seem like a science fiction story. It's more actually things are coming to light where, there's definitely something to it. So, but yeah, going into it, I was like, whatever.
Yeah, that's one thing that most people don't realize is that the ranch has been studied for a long time, even before Brandon Fugel bought it, and with adamantium real estate, and you moved in as the head of security. There's a whole history of the location, and maybe Pete from Creepy Little Book, you can give us a little rundown historically for people who are new to Skinwalker Ranch and some of the paranormal phenomenon going there, because it's not just UFOs or UAPs in the sky. You've got a whole bunch of different stuff, like Dragon mentioned, the hitchhikers and different paranormal stuff down on the ground. So people, if you could give us a bit of a rundown, a history of Skinwalker Ranch, that would be awesome right now to bring everybody up to speed.
So the history kind of breaks down into three different eras. You have this era between the Ute and the Navajo, and they were at war with one another. And it was believed that a curse that originates from these battles may be the cause for some of the paranormal activity in the basin. Then in the 1970s, you get plethoras of reports of UFOs over the area. But it wasn't until George Knapp in 1996 published a series of articles about the Sherman Ranch. At that time, it was owned by the Sherman family, who had purchased it in 1994, that really detailed this area of incredible high strangeness. I mean, everything from the aforementioned UFO phenomenon and even the kind of hitchhiker thing is mundane compared to some of the bizarre reports that came out of the 1990s there. The blue meanies, the bulletproof wolf, the dog-headed people smoking cigarettes, invisible helicopters. There is just a bizarre plethora of phenomenon that could relate to things like ley lines or this Navajo curse that was mentioned, or perhaps there's some kind of portal there opening up to these strange realities. You know, I think about the first encounter the Shermans had on that ranch, and it involved that bulletproof wolf. They were unloading cattle, and a wolf seemingly walked up to them and appeared to be tame. The wolf grabbed one of the calves through the bars of its enclosure, and they unloaded heavy firepower on this thing to get it to release this cattle. And it took a number of shots without seeming to be affected at all. In the end, a large chunk of flesh was shot off of the back of this thing, and it just trotted off into the woods as if nothing happened. And any other animal would have been deceased at this point. Supernatural occurrences were also par for the course as well. There was an instance that is very much like a poltergeist activity of Mrs. Sherman unloading groceries, only to find them packed back into the bags they had come from moments after she had turned her back on them. So we're not talking about stuff that's just limited to ghosts and campfire tales, but, you know, these strange UFO phenomenon and instances of high strangeness like cattle mutilations as well. It is a sordid history at the ranch. It's changed hands a few times over the years, of course, most notably from the Shermans to Robert Bigelow, and then for a while, the mysterious Adamantium Holdings, who now, I mean, we're aware of, but for a couple of years there, it was just a mystery who had taken over the ranch, at least in most circles.
There were some funny theories, definitely.
I looked into a lot of them.
It was actually quite entertaining to see what people theorized who the owners of the ranch were.
Was it anything X-Men related or Marvel Comics?
Oh, you had everything from Elon Musk to, gosh, I'm trying to think who the other one that cracked me up was. Who's the big motivational speaker guy?
Oh, Tony Robbins?
Yeah, it's Tony Robbins. That one, yeah, I used to send Brandon screenshots of Tony Robbins at a baseball game. I'm like, what are you doing? You're the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. What are you doing? So, no, you're right. Yeah, it's definitely the thing. The 20 years that Robert Bigelow owned it is the big mystery, really. Because they really, other than George Knapp's book, meant money of the things that you just recited from that book is it's unknown. They haven't released anything. They've kept it really close to the vest, and so they, even when Brandon went and met with Mr. Bigelow, he said, I'll sell you the property, but everything I learned, everything that I've collected, whatever, it's mine. And so we've gotten a few tales here and there from people that individually worked on the ranch, but for the most part, everything that, was discovered or noticed and things like that has been leaked out through story, but none of the data, none of the, anything else has been released. So it truly is. It's heightened the mystery for sure, especially when you throw government funding in there as well.
Right.
That was going to be something I wanted to bring up there, the government funding aspect of it, because Bigelow was deeply involved with the U.S. government, doing this research into the UAP phenomenon. So one could only assume they had their hand in Skinwalker Ranch as well.
Yeah, you have to wonder also, when you get the government involved and the mystery involved, and then he doesn't want to talk about it, and there's so much emphasis on not digging underground. And I wanted to ask you that when it comes to the history, do you think that comes from the indigenous Native American people in the folklore having things buried there, or some ancient artifact? If we're going to get a little bit weird or theoretical about it, what could possibly be underground at Skinwalker Ranch that could be affecting this? And what do you think, Dragon?
That's a good question. I've taken my fair share of a beating for the whole no digging narrative.
But it's hilarious. People love it.
And that was the mandate given to me, and the only thing we could go off of was, well, some of the stories we'd heard. We had George Knapp out, and he talked about how, speaking with the previous security guys and scientists there, that it seemed like when they dug, then it basically would trigger certain things to happen. And then we had Thomas Winterton. we don't know exactly what the injury that happened to him was, but it was, it was close to taking his life. And the only thing we could tie it to is that he'd been doing some major excavation work, trying to build a road for us to be able to get around the property a little bit easier. And then he came down with that injury that to this day, they still don't know exactly what it was. And so, we're throwing people, guests, film crews, whatever onto this property. And of course, Travis, being as cavalier as he is, he's like, first thing I want to do is start digging a hole. And so I said, wait a minute, we're not going to do that. And, the rest goes on. So honestly, I don't know. We've done all kinds of soil tests and things like that to see if there's the theory that there's possibly fallout from nuclear testing way back when it's kind of a downwind type area. And really there's nothing there that really speaks to that. We've had geologists out there to look to see if there's anything, extraordinary about the ground itself that would lend to anything that, would come along that way. So I don't know exactly, there's all kinds of stories about underground bases and underground civilizations and everything like that out there. I don't have any evidence of that, so I'm not going to speak to it and say that that's what I theorize. And I don't know that it's all tied to, the ground itself, if it's a respect thing, if it's an intrusion thing. That's kind of what we're all trying to wrap our heads around.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I think the area is so intriguing to me because you get so many people that get fascinated with the UAP and UFO phenomenon, and they try to take that angle. And it's easy to assume these things are coming from outer space or from a foreign government. But then you get this blending in at Skinwalker Ranch, where you also have the paranormal activity and different creatures, mythological type creatures, apparently showing up. Like Pete mentioned, even werewolf type entities, people seeing them apparently smoking, or whether are they smoking cigars, Pete, or are they
were smoking cigarettes and wearing trench coats.
See, that's one I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, that one. There used to be a website that listed your probability of seeing all the creatures on Skinwalker Ranch. So it was like you had a 15% chance of seeing an orb. You had a 10% chance of seeing a bulletproof wolf. But the people had encountered, and there is historic precedence for these type of creatures. They're called the Cynocephali. And the ancient Greeks believed that they were a race of dog-headed men. And they actually, would recount stories of engaging in commerce with these beings. So there is precedent for them to exist out there in the world. Whether or not they're manifesting at Skinwalker Ranch, these kind of creatures from ancient Greek mythology, your mileage may vary, I always say, when it comes down to what you believe. But it is part of the broader lore of the kind of creatures that have appeared there. The water babies were another one. These various orbs, the blue meanies who liquefied a few cats, I believe, killed a couple dogs on the property back in the 90s. So a lot of this is whether it's real or whether it's blown completely out of proportion. It's just part of that mythology that's built up around the place.
Yeah, and you go clear back into the Native American curses on the land, over the Ute Indians and the warring and the slave trading that went on back in the day. And there's this whole dark history. And then there's also, is it Bottle Creek Reservoir? Bottle Hollow. What can you tell us about Bottle Hollow? Because I hear that coming up all the time in relation to Skinwalker Ranch. It's further up north from the.
It's right. So it is, I don't know, it's not very far from the ranch valley. Literally the big mesa on top that everyone calls Skinwalker Ridge. If you follow that directly north from the ranch, there's Bottle Hollow Reservoir. It's owned and run by the Ute tribe. So you have to have special permits to utilize it, things like that.
Okay.
I've definitely heard stories associated with, things in around there. We had a chance to speak a lot with the late Junior Hicks, who was a historian in the basin, was just a treasure trove of knowledge, just sweet little man that was a science teacher in the basin and would anytime there was anything would happen, they'd call him because they thought, well, we can talk to Junior about it, And so he went through, 40, 50 years of documenting the phenomenon and everything like that. And we had him out to the ranch. He and his sweet little wife, Uncle Jim Morse, would go pick him up, bring him out there. He'd sit and tell us stories, and then he'd go take him for ice cream afterward and take him back. It was great. I wish that, the world could have known a little bit more about that guy, but he told stories about Bottle Hollow of people claiming that they'd seen craft fly over the reservoir with, whether it be military jets or whatever following it, and then it dives into the water and disappears as if there's some sort of an opening or underground or underwater, base type of a thing and stuff like that. But I've also heard, some not so great stories about, people that for no reason seem normal go to that area and feel overwhelmed and have committed suicide there as well. So, there's definitely creepy things that happen. I think there is a lot to the Native American presence in that area. I think that, the stories we've heard and the curses and everything, a lot of it ties to that. And we've had a chance to speak with quite a few of the Native Americans, both from the Navajo and the Ute tribe, that have been willing to talk to us and come on the property. And, they are 100%, believers in the fact that there's, ancient presences there. One of them termed, like, he felt like he's like, I don't know what's going on, but I just feel like the hills are full of people watching us, old spirits, things like that. So at the end of the day, it's like you said, you can't categorize it into one particular thing. Sorry, all you did is ask about Bottle Hollow, and I just kind of
No, I think it's really fascinating. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think that's fascinating too. And I think one of the things that a lot of folks who are interested in this UFO and UAP phenomenon, when they start to stumble into places like Skinwalker Ranch, it kind of broadens their horizon a bit. I'm like you, Dragon. I've always been very skeptical of these sorts of things, but I've always been fascinated by them. And I really think that it's easy as a human being to get very egocentric when it comes to what we know and what we don't know. And I think that it's important for us to kind of step back and say, you know what, it's great to be skeptical, but it's also really important to be open-minded when you're considering these things, because we live in a bizarre reality. We live in a, our reality is built on a quantum reality that is bizarre. And I think for us to pretend that we know everything and our confidence in our, this idea that we can easily discount any sort of paranormal phenomena because it hasn't happened to us, I think is very egotistical.
I agree. I think you get this resonant energy in a location that can occur. And it may be due to the geology or the history, but in the end, our human experience is that of consciousness. And your consciousness being in an environment is also putting out an energy, an electromagnetic field of energy, and also a whole spectrum of things that we may not be aware of. And when you go through these traumatic events, especially large scale trauma, and like a Bottle Hollow Reservoir and up in that area, it's like becomes this kind of a vortex of negative energy unless you go in there with your own perceptions being like, this is a good place and I enjoy it here. And that seems to interface with your experience. Like Dragon, you said that you go around the Uintah Basin in that area and it's just home to you and you feel comfortable there, but other people feel this malevolent type of presence or experience there and almost kind of are open to the weird paranormal things that occur and perceive suddenly almost like a negative experience looping from the past, from these historical events, or maybe there's like a time loop there. So if we want to get kind of weird or theoretical with it, Michael, what do you think is going on at Skinwalker Ranch? Do you think it's a vibrational energy where the reality is thin, or do you think it's an actual overlay of dimensional reality where other beings and entities that exist come through? What would you say if you were going to speculate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited with the breaking science that physicists are doing with this idea of wormholes, right? So, we still barely understand what a black hole is, and we're sitting here experimenting with this idea of wormholes, and theoretically they're possible. And for such a long time, as we were beginning to get into quantum physics, we said, no, this is just an oddity of the math. And it's really not. It's really not an oddity of the math. We're starting to discover that these things are possible. What we can't do yet is figure out how to open and close these things because they're extremely fragile and they're extremely tiny. But in the future, if we are able to leverage some other exotic forms of physics, maybe we can hold these things open, and maybe other species, either extraterrestrial or interdimensional, have figured these things out. The universe is billions of years old. Humans have been barely getting off this rock for the past 100 years. As Maeve says, yes, we are very anthropocentric. So I think it's either, I kind of go back and forth on a daily basis between my skeptical mind and my, theoretical mind. But I think pretty much anything is possible. And I'd really be curious if there isn't some sort of activity or intelligent activity utilizing, these sorts of wormholes or portals.
Yeah, I think when you think of a technology or dimensional reality that moves different than the speed of light, our perception of reality is completely confined to just the colors of the rainbow and certain vibrational waveforms that we can perceive. But if something exists outside of that, like below the infrared spectrum or above the ultraviolet spectrum, for example, moving at a different frame rate, then their ability to move through our reality, like a solid mountain or the reservoir or the plateau of the Uinta Basin, if you're moving faster or slower than the speed of light, you could technically move through even what we perceive as solid matter, like it was sand or like it was smoke, and float through the empty space of it. And as you came in and out of that, could be perceived like paranormally or some sort of a light in the sky or opening a portal and stepping through. And so I think all of that, when you get into the quantum science of it, gets really interesting and possible. Pete, what do you think? You've been studying all the mysteries of the histories and all of that stuff. What would you say your guess is theoretically on Skinwalker Ranch or what could be going on
In
there?
a lot of ways, the Skinwalker Ranch reminds me of a place in Massachusetts known as the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah.
This is another area of high intensity UFO sightings and poltergeist activity. The only difference is that when we're talking about the Bridgewater Triangle, we're talking about a largely wooded area that is forested compared to, Skinwalker Ranch, which is an operating ranch, for lack of a better explanation. I think, though, what we're talking about is places where the veil between our reality and the possible other reality that overlaps ours exists. I'm a firm believer in something called Ultra-Terrestrials, or at least that's what I term them. These are creatures that may or may not exist, but originate here on this earth. And I think they have inspired legends like the Fae folk, like creatures of Paracelsus alchemy, the elementals, if you will.
The nymphs of ancient Greece. And
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that these were all inspired by actual ultra-terrestrial entities. I think that when you parallel some of the missing time people experience in these close encounters that are claimed and some of the lore and legends of the Fae folk, which have very similar kind of stories, I think that you'll find a lot of connotations that lead one to jump to the conclusion there may be a connection there. Also, I'm curious about this. I did want to ask Dragon, do you know if there are cave systems in the area around the ranch?
So we've been told a lot of stories about people going into caves. I mean, we've had individuals that, lived there, whether they were, relatives of the Shermans and things like that, have talked about these big cave openings and things like that. We've done a lot of looking. We've done a lot of, searching around there. I mean, there's cave systems throughout the basin. It's just kind of, the nature of that area. But, in and around the ranch, we've looked a lot for them. And the crazy thing is the geology of that place changes so regularly. If you go back, you can take the old geological surveys before we had Google Earth and Google Maps and things like that. And, you know, the very hillside, the mesa side has, you know, you can see the change just based off of the soil type and, you know, the actual structure of it. So there's a good possibility that there is a cave system there, that the opening we just haven't been able to find yet. And we've done all sorts of crazy, I mean, you'll see, we've done a lot of really intensive mapping of the property over the past year now, that you'll see some cool stuff about. We've been looking for those things, you know, whether it be, you know, through ground penetrating radar, through LiDAR, through, you know, photogrammetry, all of those things, because we've heard those stories and we want to see if there actually is something to it. So have we been able to find said cave system? Not yet. We're not going to stop looking. But as of right now, you know, on the ranch itself, which is really where we've done the bulk of our exploration, I haven't been able to, you know, really find anything.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Pete, I like that you brought up ultra-terrestrials. Now, people just kind of, that term goes right over their head because they're used to the phrase extraterrestrials. But extraterrestrials kind of indicates something coming from outer space or from another planet or somewhere out in the universe. And ultra-terrestrials is kind of this subcategory in there where it's more like an interdimensional type entity or something that pre-existed here on the Earth or has lived in an alternate form of reality in this super spectrum of reality outside of our perspectives. And there are these beings or entities that when they manifest or appear to us could take on all sorts of mimicry or types of shapes, like shapeshifters, like maybe dogmen smoking in leather jackets or whatever, or Bigfoot, or even, you know, gray aliens or paranormal poltergeist type entities, a whole host of different variety. They're more of like they tap into your sort of subconscious wiring and interface with that and then play on your own reality, almost like they're in a nightmare or a dream, and they appear based on your own subsystem. And John Keel did a lot of work and talked about ultra-terrestrials as well. And I really agree with that in a lot of ways. I think that there's other living beings not like right alongside of us is kind of an interesting thought to go down that road.
Well, you brought that up earlier, right? I mean, that was one of the most important things that we have to recognize as human beings is that our five senses are incredibly limited, right? The bandwidth that we have to see what's actually going on in reality is so small. And most of our science is built on inference, right? So we're trying to understand things based on other things that happen. So we really can't see the things, even when you talk about quantum mechanics, you really can't see. I mean, these are things that we understand based on predictive math, and then we test these things, but it's still happening in a black box, and we infer information based on that. We're blind. Human beings are blind when it comes to the spectrum of realities that are existing in and around us at all times.
Definitely. We actually have another guest I'm going to bring on the show. Pete, while you're going ahead, we're going to bring in Christina from the Paradigm Shift. She's a host of the Debrief as well. And she has histories of the mysteries, I think mysteries and the
mysteries with the history.
Mysteries with the history there. So let's welcome Christina to the show as well and get some of her input as well. So
Christina,
hi everyone.
How you doing?
Hey there. When Carl invited me, I was in my PJs doing housework. So it took me a get ready. Dragon, I wanted to ask you really quick. Is that shirt you're wearing Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday?
It's Doc Holliday from Tombstone, yeah.
Nice.
We were talking about
one of my favorite movies, so yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. So Christina, what do you think? What's your theory on Skinwalker Ranch? If you had to just throw it all on the table and say, this is what I kind of think might be going on, what do you think is going on at Skinwalker Ranch?
Well, I kind of wanted to ask Dragon a question. Hopefully that can kind of give me an answer. And I wanted to say, Dragon, how often do you sleep on the property? Like either taking a siesta or overnight? Because I'm interested in the whole dream concept when it comes to sleeping on Skinwalker Ranch, and what people sleeping on the property remember of unusual or strange dreams. Do you ever encounter that?
So I sleep there all the time. Yeah, that's where I stay when I'm working. I'm living in the command center that you've seen a little bit of on TV, you know, where we meet around the table. Like there's a couple of bedrooms in there. One of them is mine. That's where I stay. And honestly, once I got past the initial, stories and all that, the woo-woo stuff, and I spent more time there. Like in the beginning, I didn't sleep, but it wasn't necessarily a dream thing. It was more of just, I'd heard stories and I had my pistol under my pillow waiting for, the next bulletproof wolf to come running through the door or something like that. So, but definitely, I mean, without going into it too much, because I don't know how much they're going to touch on this, but I can tell you that Travis doesn't sleep well there ever, the entire time he's there. Like, he has the craziest dreams. He wakes up just, haggard and beaten because he doesn't feel like he can sleep. He's hearing voices. He's feeling strange sensations, having the most bizarre dreams. And then, he'll go home back to Alabama, where he's from, even just for a weekend or something like that. And he sleeps like a baby. And then as soon as he comes back to the ranch, it drives him crazy. It really does. And, it's been interesting to see him go from, the biggest skeptic to somebody that's like, I still can't explain it. I still am not willing to completely drink the Kool-Aid, but there's definitely something that is messing with, his dream state and everything else. But as far as I am, people ask me that all the time. How do you sleep out there all by yourself? I'm like, I don't know. To me, I don't know if it's just I've become accustomed to the place, or I'm at peace with the place, or the place is at peace with me. But I sleep like a baby. I'm dead tired at the end of the day.
Now, you have had one, I know you mentioned on the Unidentified Celebrity Review with Michael and Luis, you mentioned having one encounter that was sort of like paranormal, where you felt something come up and sort of shove your bed. Would you mind telling us that incident or some of your actual paranormal type experiences you had happen to you?
Sure. That's one of the things to me that is the strangest, because there's really no explanation for it. I wasn't even asleep, so I know that it wasn't a dream thing or me twitching in my sleep, which I know I do. It was the end of the day. I was just laying in bed looking on my phone. I don't know, who knows what I was playing, a game, looking at YouTube, something. And it felt as if, and I've got kids and they've ran into my bed before, and it, startles you and things like, but it felt like something just literally came up and kneed my bed really hard, and it shook the whole thing. So I got up and wandered around and looked around, and actually, Caleb Bench, who, works security with me out there, he was in the other bedroom. So I walked into his room and said, were you up? Did you do something? Did you drop something? He kind of like looks at me like, what are you talking about? I'm sorry, the lights in this place keep going on.
That's okay.
And I said, so I told him, and he just kind of rolled his eyes at me. And so I went back, and about, 5 or 6 minutes later, he comes walking in, and his eyes are like the size of golf balls. And he's like, dude, that same thing just happened to me. And that was it. It was like an instance of, hey, we're here, we're going to let you know about it type of a thing, is what it felt. Obviously, I didn't sleep terribly easy that night. But yeah, that was definitely a strange experience where, it was not just, something shifting or whatever. It was a physical, as if somebody really hit the side of the bed, somebody or something hit the side of the bed and shook us pretty good. So, that's
wild.
It's definitely one of the most physical. A lot of the things I've experienced are, feelings, stuff like that. But as far as an actual physical manifestation of something being there, that was definitely one of the most, definitely one of the craziest things I've experienced.
Dragon, can I ask you a quick question about episode 4? I don't know if you remember it or not, but at the end of the episode, you guys were all sitting at the table, and somebody pointed up and said, there's one in the sky, there's a UFO, and you all looked up and saw it. And then we saw it cut to, and it looked like, I couldn't tell if it was a video from that day or if it was edited in from a previous video. Do you know if that was actual video footage from that sighting that day in that last episode?
It was. The thing is, yeah, those things, and the funny thing is I don't know if too many people picked up on it. So Jim Morse, who started out as kind of, the ranch, they call him the ranch manager, things like that. He's more of our he's our public relations / make friends with everybody guy. And he loves to wear crazy vests. So, but you could see when he got into UTV after that, I mean, that was his first experience ever seeing anything like that. And, because he's not around as often and things. And so you could see he sits in there, and it was one of my favorite lines from that episode is he's like, I definitely saw that. I don't know what it was, but I definitely saw that. He didn't even have words to explain. So that was from that. Those things, I don't know. We've got to work with those guys to have a camera trained on that area.
That's what I was saying. Like, why don't they have just a camera pointing that direction at all times?
All the time. And we're working on getting almost like a fisheye camera that points to the sky all the way around the place. We've been working hard on getting that sort of technology because, these things, they show up, they're there briefly. You notice when by the time those camera guys get these big, huge cameras around, they maybe catch a glimpse of it and then it's gone. So, that was from when Ariel was there, when Rabbi Ariel Zadakis was out there. That was actual footage from that time.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear.
That's so fascinating. Let's go ahead and bring in Luis. Just joined up. He's backstage right now. So we're gonna so now Dragon's done.
Dragon's got to go. Dragon's got to go. Nice to briefly say hello. What's up, guys? Pete.
How do you do?
What's up, bro? We finally get to talk face to face.
Can you
Nice
believe
to talk to you. Good to see you.
Good to see you, man. I really love your channel. I
feel the same way.
Don't take this the wrong way. I fall asleep to it all the time. Especially the later one. That's the one I usually pass out to because I'm just not zonked out by then.
That's why I do it late night, people.
Yeah.
The best part is the intermission, all that music. It's like so good.
I will tell you, Pete, your Patreon commercial has inspired the entire tone of my channel. Wait till you see what we've got cooked up, dude. It's all when I saw that, I was like, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
He's such an inspiration to all of us.
No, he is cool.
Thank you very much.
Cool, dude. I can't wait to get to know you.
Weirdo, folks. That's all.
No, and that's the best part. You're a professional weirdo. Listen, Dragon, don't get upset. I also love you. Very, very much.
I am not upset at all.
I know. My love is deep for you, though, because last time I expressed my love for someone following me, you got very jelly. Oh, and I was actually, no, I know. Actually,
it's just fun. I like people that you can, banter with and just, and you take it well. It was just funny.
Well, you found your home here then, because that's us.
Yeah, that's totally us. That is absolutely 100% us. Listen, I didn't mean to throw off the rails of the conversation. What are we talking about? What's going on?
So we've been talking about the theoretical side of Skinwalker Ranch. Instead of just sticking to the television show, we're digging into the history and some of the mysteries of it, and then being open about our theories of what we think is going on at the place. I also wanted to dig into a little bit, on the show they did, you guys discovered some petroglyphs. I'm getting a little bit of an echo now, Luis. Maybe you've got your volume or something going on. Yeah. But the petroglyphs, I feel like, got looked at by a specialist. There was the Hebrew ritual that was done, Jewish mystic ritual that was done. I thought that was actually really important to me as somebody that studies the ancient mysticism and some of that. There's like the pace of you and some of the ancient theories and mystic stuff that revolves around the Big Dipper and Polaris and the North Star and the Draco constellation and how they revolve around the North Star. There's very specific historical rituals involved in opening portals to make contact with extra dimensional or ultra-terrestrial beings, what they considered their gods at the time. And there was ancient people that used to do these rituals. And when you go out even in the desert now around the Grand Canyon all the way up through in Sago Canyon, you still find the Native American people will go and they'll make what looks like a dream catcher of stones on the ground and sit in the middle of it and do particular rituals. And even over in Asia, when they do this, like the Kala Chakra initiation, there's a high correlation with these rituals and UFO sightings or paranormal encounters or dimensional beings stepping through. And I wanted to ask you, Dragon, just a quick segue into that. Is there any more being done on that mystical side, the paranormal, and tying into the ancient history of the location and not just the science?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's really the thing that interests me the very most. I mean, yeah, it's cool to do the science experiments, things like that, but my feeling on the place and what's going on is more from, call it a spiritual side of thing or a mystical side of things, as opposed to we're gonna trigger something by shining a laser into it or whatever to happen. I honestly, episode 4, because now it's aired and we can talk about it, is probably one of my favorites because it's centered a little bit more around that side of things, which has always fascinated me more. I wish that I've contended I would like us to do more with the Native Americans, have them come out, more and go through that. And we did. And, for whatever reason, it hit the cutting room floor. Maybe it'll show up, at some other time, because to me, that was some of the most profound experiences I've had out there. This experience with having Ariel come out and do his chants and basically take it from that side. I mean, according to, their traditions and things, with their tonal technology, they have the ability to open and close portals, if you will. And so that was the whole point of that. And, just because we didn't see, something open up or anything come out, I don't know. I honestly can't explain it. It was hot that night. It was really hot. And when we went walking down, when we saw things on the FLIR camera, like looking different, it was like the heat signature kept changing on and off. And so when we went walking in there, and it was freezing cold. I mean, it was like walking into, like a walk-in freezer type of a thing. But the strange thing was, to me, is it almost felt like the cold came from in out, as opposed to like, it's cold here now. So that definitely, I'm glad you brought that up, because as far as physical experiences I've had, that was definitely one of the most strange and interesting. And it was freezing. We walked around and came back to the front, and the temperature started to rise again. And you could see it. I'm glad that Eric, it was kind of, on a whim, he decided to throw that FLIR camera out there and see what would happen under that. And it was crazy to watch. In the very beginning, the treetops get super, super hot. And then it's almost like, this blanket of heat coming down, which, heat usually goes up. And then all of a sudden, in the center, it gets really cold and spreads out, and the whole place gets cold. So
that's wild.
It really was. And I know that there's some follow-up coming up to that, so I can't really, go into it. But it definitely, to me, was, I would love to see us do more on that side of things, because that's more, the feeling I have about the place. You asked, what do I think's going on? To me, I don't think that it's spaceships. There may be craft. Yes. I mean, obviously we've seen that sort of thing, but I think it's more of a dimensional type thing. Speaking to what Mike was saying earlier, it could be a thin spot. It could be the basin is, if you look at it as a bowl, and Skinwalker Ranch sits kind of dead center. So is it because it's able to focus energy there that it allows for that sort of thing to happen? We don't know. That's also what we're trying to figure out. But to me, the way I've felt things, the way that I've seen things come and go, I would say it's more of an interdimensional, inner realm, whatever you want to say, a thin spot in that is what lends itself to all the strange things. It's hard for me to believe that it's, an ancient a spacecraft from outer space. But then again, I don't know that.
What do you guys think about the breakaway civilization or the Wakanda hypothesis?
Yeah. I mean, that goes back into the Shaver mystery a little bit, and the ultra-terrestrials being like a dimensional beings that live alongside us or kind of hide under the oceans or under earth in that sense. And the native indigenous ancient people would have had more contact with them because they're not all distracted in our physical reality with cell phones and the internet and this whole story going on. They were there in their environment a little bit more. Before we dig into that really deep, I just wanted to mention really quick, because this is my show and I have the opportunity to do it finally.
Plug away, Carl.
Which is when it comes to the petroglyphs, Dragon, one thing that I noticed is that they were specific about where they're positioned in the sky. If that was actually the Big Dipper and the Draco constellation, then it's actually telling you a time of day. Meaning you have the horizon line carved along the bottom of the petroglyph and the Big Dipper down at a particular angle, and then the Draco constellation up at another angle, and then different triangular shapes sort of on that petroglyph rock. That would indicate to me when the stars are aligned at a particular time or place where the Big Dipper would be settled down on the plateau and Draco would be up to the right. So that would be like around 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So I wonder if even the time of day doing these ancient rituals would tie into that, or the specific people that were doing it, doing a ritual or mystic thing that resembled more of what they would have done to make them carve that as a clue. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me.
Yeah. It never got mentioned, but honestly, I think that little chunk of rock is just a fraction of what's left from what was a bigger picture. I mean, you look, there's other massive rocks there that have that same, kind of desert varnish underneath that have like broken up. I think that's a tiny part of a much bigger picture. So based on what you see there, yes, it's easy to say, okay, this rock is containing the entire picture. I think that there was a lot more to it. You look around the area, I can't imagine they would just pick that one little spot. My belief is that there was a bigger rock face there. And so we're seeing, one piece of a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle, possibly. But we're talking massive slabs of rock. We've turned over some others to see. But you can see it looks like it's fractured off. But it's definitely something to look at. No theory that, is thrown out there are we going to just dismiss. It's the fun thing about it, and the frustrating thing is one person can look at it and say that they see this, and another person can look at it and say that they see this, depending on what their mental background is or their frame of view. Like everything's going to be a star chart to Travis because that's his deal. Whereas you may bring in, which we did, a Native American gentleman to look at it, and he'd say, it's a serpent. This is the story that they were trying to tell, so on and so forth. So, it's all just so open to interpretation. But let's chat offline again and tell me again what you just explained, and let's look into that. See, if anything correlates with what happens at certain times of day or whatever. That's definitely, we're not going to, we're trying to figure out what the hell is going on there, just like everybody else has done. So, we'll take any sort of, real good, direction and see if there's anything to it for sure.
Definitely. Michael, you brought up the Wakanda theory, the breakaway civilization. Like, explain a little bit more about that, and then we'll see what everybody on the panel has to say.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your all's thoughts are on that, because this idea, we've only explored 3% of the Earth's oceans. We see things like Tic Tacs potentially coming out of the oceans. We think of potential submersive UFOs. So my curiosity has always been, is there potentially another civilization that's far more technologically advanced, potentially has mastered, these sort of interdimensional sciences, and are they possibly living here now, and with it possibly within the Earth?
Definitely. What's your thoughts on that, Luis? What do you think?
It's pretty wild.
Wake up, Luis.
Yeah, no, it's pretty wild to think, man. I mean, Wakanda, like hiding right in front of us. That would be. I do like the idea of exploring the oceans more. I think then again, I mean, you have to concentrate budgets on certain things. But this idea that I'm not sure if it's just 3%. I feel like that number is low. Like, you could go to Google Maps and you could get a mapping of the entire ocean floor, and it's pretty damn accurate. But with that said, I agree. We've sent less instruments down there than we have into space. And I don't understand why. I know that the military, the Navy, was it World War II or after World War II? They had the most detailed. They mapped the entire seafloor, including the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of our oceans. It's deeper than it is the Himalayas or high, and we can't get to the bottom of that. That's kind of weird. I mean, we can get down there with a UAV, an unmanned vehicle, but we can't get down there in an actual submarine. But we've landed on the moon. It's that to me there's a huge disconnect there. And I think you're right. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if we went down there and we found, James Cameron's version of the Abyss. An entire civilization that is interacting with us on a whole nother level that we don't even realize. So yeah, I mean, it's a cool theory. I definitely like the idea of it.
You have Bob Bigelow also, in many interviews saying, well, where are these beings if they're extraterrestrials? And he says they're not necessarily from outer space. They're right under our noses, and then he just kind of laughs.
That's something that comes back a lot with these government guys. Like Elizondo said, could be right in front of us, could be right under our feet.
Which brings up this whole Wakanda theory, not necessarily being like a physical location, but an overlapping dimensional reality that sort of like bleeds into ours or bumps up with surface tension to ours, and they have the ability. Christina, what's your thoughts on what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch?
I mean, I find this such a fascinating area of research, and I can tie it to some of the strange things that happen around Mount Shasta in California, and possibilities with the history of Atlantis, but also maybe is involved with some strange disappearances that have been documented by Dave Paulides in Missing 411. There are really, really strange things occurring all the time, in the oceans, on land, everywhere. And, there's still disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle and the Asian Devil's Triangle. And, like I said, so many people are just, disappearing off the face of the earth every single year. So many vanish.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It makes you question the nature of reality. Like Dragon, you were mentioning the vibrational sense of reality, that we actually live in waveforms, and what we perceive as physical objects are really just densities of vibration where physical matter has formed together or aligned itself and gotten entangled with itself and creates a vibrational pattern that we perceive as solid. But if these entities or beings, this breakaway civilization somehow has the technology to move inside or outside of that, or through that, control that vibrational reality, then we could see a whole bunch of different paranormal events associated with that we can't fathom. Pete, what do you think? You've been studying the history of all these different mysteries and stuff like that. So what you brought up John Keel and the Ultra-Terrestrials. So.
Right. And this is all interconnected, every little bit of this. So, I mean, we can go back all the way to the Shaver mystery, where he spoke of a great beings from space known as the Atlans and the Titans, who came to this planet in ancient times. They created a slave race called the Abandonero. And then after they were on this planet for too long, the rays of the sun changed and they could not survive here anymore. So the Atlans and the Titans left, and they left the Abandonero here. The Abandonero diverged into two distinct races, the Terro, which retained their humanity, and the Dero, which were, for lack of a better term, biological robots. But they were depraved. They're wrong.
They're very much like the alien greys as described. Like they're kind of
Yes.
like these biological living organisms that look like alien greys, and the Taros are different, more benevolent type beings. But it's almost like the Anunnaki mystery that
Exactly.
you get. It's very, very similar in the ancient Greek mysteries. So go ahead, Pete.
You know, and we continue on with the idea with these ultra-terrestrials, and they've come up again and again as we talk about this, and especially when Christina mentioned missing 411. I believe these ultra-terrestrials are responsible for these kind of disappearances, and I also believe ancient religions like Islam speaks to these creatures in their scriptures. They're called the jinn, and they are a race that existed on the planet before humanity was created. They had used and abused the planet, had engaged in senseless wars, and were cursed by Allah to no longer live on this plane of existence. Yet they still have supernatural abilities and can interact with us. They are not angels. They are not demons. They are not human. They are the jinn. And they fit this bill for these ultra-terrestrials just as well as Paracelsus and his elementals did, and just as well as these ultra-terrestrials do that John Keel spoke about.
Yeah, so a big topic, and
I think the whole show.
Well, here's I don't know if you guys knew this about Pete, but I just recently learned this. He almost was a priest.
Yeah. They tried to recruit me when I was in high school.
a priest, like for the Catholic Church.
For the Catholic Church, that's right. I went through 12 years of parochial education, and my senior year they gave us all a little test.
Wow.
And then just based on the results of your test, you got called down to the auditorium where two priests from the seminary sat and talked with you for a half hour and tried to recruit you for the priesthood.
Well, Dragon and I used to be saints, actually. So we grew up both Mormon in that realm. So we're here in the Utah area. So bringing a little bit of that hometown flavor. But yeah, go ahead, Luis.
No, I was going to ask a question to you guys because I'm we talk about portals, right? And how these ancient rituals open up portals. Are these portals one of three things? Either they're actual portals that you can see with your eyeballs, right? Like, and I don't know what you would see inside this portal or on the other side of this portal. I'm not sure how the portal would work, right? But they're either physical, you can see them, or B, it's manifesting in your consciousness, and it seems so real. It's in, if that makes sense. It's in your brain, it's in your head, but the feelings and the visceralness of it is still very, very real. Or C, it's kind of both of those things. I mean, what do you think? What do you guys think? Is it one or the other, or is it maybe both? Because you say we have ancient rituals that they try to do today. Why don't they open up the portals that their ancestors, were opening up? Is it because they've lost some of the knowledge? Or go for it, Pete.
If I may interject, some actually accuse the modern UFO phenomenon on the work of occultists. They say that Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were engaged in something called the Babylon working in the Mojave Desert. And not long after this occult undertaking do we have the first sightings of flying saucers on Mount Rainier. So between that and Aleister Crowley doing some work with a being known as Lamb, or Iwas, who translated the Book of the Law to him. And if you've ever seen an illustration of this creature, this was done in 1911, I believe, this drawing, somewhere between 1901 and 1911. And to look at this illustration, it looks like a typical gray alien.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And going back to the Shaver mystery and Ultra-Terrestrials, that was a couple of years before Kenneth Arnold and his sightings even. And he described these flying craft and ultra-terrestrial beings. And Kenneth Arnold himself, even though he was the guy that coined the phrase flying saucers and was quoted in all the newspapers as calling them flying saucers, he, when you read his actual writings, said that these were from the earth or a parallel dimension of reality inside the earth and under the ocean. It wasn't extraterrestrials from outer space. So I think we're picking at a really interesting topic here, and we're just a little bit over an hour. So we're going to wrap this up here in just a minute, but I wanted to go around the room and get any kind of final thoughts about what we hope to see done at Skinwalker Ranch? If we had had one wish that we could make, what is something that you would want done or research done or a mystical method done or scientific research done at Skinwalker Ranch? And we'll just go around the room. Dragon, why don't you go ahead and go first? If you had your wish as the head of security, what would you do as an experiment or mystical type thing that you would bring onto the ranch to try and explore it?
I think we've done some of what interests me the most, but I would like to delve deeper into it more. I would like to do more with, the Native American folks from, the various tribes, both the Navajo and the Ute tribe, because, that's kind of the crux of the whole lore behind the Skinwalker and everything like that. And when we've had those people out, then it's been really cool, and what they say resonates and things like that. And, it adds to a different non-tainted perspective off of science or science fiction or whatever. I mean, they hold true to their beliefs and the things that they've been taught. And it's interesting to see the parallels between what you can say, what they may say, we may say as a portal in modern times. They talk about, a rainbow bridge that their ancestors traveled on, things of that nature. I love that stuff. So for me, I would really rather delve more into, that side of things. And I use the term the spiritual side, or, that side of things, as opposed to so much, hammering it as a science project all the time. Because I think that we can get closer to more of an understanding that way than we can by, just instrumenting the hell out of the place. I think that's important to try and capture things and see if they can correlate. But to me, it's more of, the human spiritual element that I would like to see us, do a little bit more of.
I agree with you, Dragon. And honestly, a lot of the scientific equipment that they bring in, if you were to break it open and look at it, you realize it's just crystals in there. There's vibrating crystals or lasers going through crystals. And in the end, it's all kind of, our scientific equipment is very mystical based anyways in the end. So I think it's very interesting. What do you think, Pete? What would you like to see done there?
I'm going to echo that sentiment. You never send a scientist to do a wizard's job. I think you need a team of wizards here. I think if you had to put together a little X-Men group of maybe some shaman, maybe some trained occultists, I like that idea quite a bit. I think that really to crack this kind of nut, you're dealing with things that science can't quantify. You can't. I mean, how much does a ghost weigh? Come on. Right. Science can't answer those questions. We've seen this for years. I mean, there are famous people who have made a great living about things that go bump in the night and using the scientific method to try and determine what just touched my leg? So I think at the end of the day, you need to bring in some wizards. So I'm right with that sentiment. So let's get the wizards going.
Get the wizards going and surround them with the scanners and the lasers and the 360 cameras, and then sit them out there to do their wizardry. Yeah. I love that, Pete. What about you, Luis? If you had your choice, you've been very critical of the show Skinwalker Ranch.
I have. I've been critical of the science of it. I haven't been critical of the entertainment.
No, I agree.
The entertainment I thought so far, entertainment-wise, I thought season one's been more entertaining because I got a lot more dragon in season one.
Right.
Season two, I'm not getting as much dragon, but you know what? Just real quick, I thought this last episode could have been all about Rabbi. Honestly, I wanted to know the philosophies of why he was doing what he was doing, and I like that eloquent take that you had, Bryant, with how you're into this and how you thought this was the best episode and why you believed it was, and those feelings that you got from it. And we don't get those little nuances in the show, and it's a bummer. And now that's why I'm glad we get to do this with you sometimes. But what I would say, I like what Pete's saying. Bring the wizards. I'm with you, man. Bring the wizards. But I would say, going back to what Bryant's saying, and I don't know if this is possible, and I can't remember whether or not I brought this up when you were on my show, but this idea of donating, opening the land to the native tribes and letting them do whatever the hell they want on that land. Just completely open it up to only them. And keep all the other elements of that ranch intact, but come to an agreement with the local people and try and heal it, if that's possible. A spiritual healing by the people that are from there. What happened to my camera? I don't know. But you guys can still hear me. It doesn't matter.
Skinwalker Ranch
They're in
is
disagreement.
Yeah,
with you,
no,
Louis.
they're in
in
total.
disagreement.
The spirits are not having it. I can switch cameras, no problem. Yeah, so it's like I would donate the land back to them while at the same time coming to an agreement with them that, hey, we would also love to scientifically study this as we're spiritually healing it. I think we need both. We can't have too much of one and too much of the other. I think both are necessary, and I think documenting it in an honest and true way where we get those really intimate moments that Dragon shares with us on this show, or that I'm sure the Rabbi had at either one of those two discussions that they filmed with him. I know there was some great nuggets that hit the editing floor, and I'm so bummed because I felt like you could have really filled all of that with whatever he was saying. I was so fascinated by him. And then when we got Jim to go back and give us the history of the ranch with the pictures and the Native American, I'm like, dude, this is what the show should be, in my opinion. Of course, I'm just one guy, but but yeah, bring the wizards but also back it with some science, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of that, Luis. I think that would be really interesting. It might be complicated to bring the Native American people onto the land, but yeah, seeing how they would react. I liked in the episode where, I can't remember his name now, but he had the experience as a young boy, and they went to seek shelter in the weather and then got terrified by paranormal events. And he almost seemed, I would love to hear the conversation off camera, like he was almost tormented or haunted by this thing over the years and his whole experience with that. Christina, what about you? What would you see done if you had your way? Would you go to Skinwalker Ranch, and what would you do?
Okay, well, yes. I mean, easy yes, I would go. But I'm for this case, I'm leaning more on the scientific side, and I would want them to, focusing more powerful cameras on the skies at all times with like a trigger alarm for something significant being live monitored. I think that would be more useful, along with FLIR thermal cameras monitoring the property hotspots 24/7. But the biggest one, I think, my favorite one at least, is allowing me to camp out there and where the portals appear, and I'll just jump right through it with my handy camera.
You gotta tie a rope around your waist first.
No. I'm going all in. Go big or go home.
Jesus. Well, just make sure you bring plenty of ice cream, Christina, because that sounds like you may not come back, kiddo.
This is true. I got to bring the ice cream and the noodles.
Yeah, I think she'd be totally in for that.
I think she's up for it.
Michael, what about you, my friend? What would you do if you had your way and could go there and do whatever?
Yeah, me. I'm skeptical, but I'm very, very open-minded and fascinated by this topic. And I really think that you need both. And I love this idea of bringing the wizards in, because I do wonder to what level paranormal activity reacts vibrationally with human interaction. And I wonder if coming with too much skepticism actually closes the door to the data. So I think you need both. I think you need to come with, bring the wizards and document the shit out of it. I agree with Christina completely. Get some incredible high resolution, great lenses, great cameras that can operate at so many frames a second that you could slow it down. Keep those things positioned in the sky, and let's see what's up there.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. We've gone around the room. Everybody shared their ideas a little bit and theories about what could be going on. We talked about ultra-terrestrials, the paranormal, interdimensional reality overlapping. Everybody's kind of asking where the links are and where everybody can find you guys. I will refresh and put all of the links down in the description below as soon as this video ends. I think I've already got Dragon's Twitter on there, Pete from Creepy Little Book, Michael from the Singularity Lab. We had Luis and Christina kind of hop on late today and join the panel as well. So I'll include their link trees so you can find them. But Dragon, tell everybody where they can find you and just on Twitter, right?
I'm not telling you where you can find it.
We're working on that. I'm going to get
Skinwalker
Dragon on
Ranch.
it.
There's going to be an analysis of the background and the type of windows in that building very soon.
I want to hide most of the time. No, it's funny. Yeah, I'm on Twitter at SWR Dragon. You know, I'm not terribly active there. I've got other things to do, and usually when I am active, all it does is cause a shitstorm. So,
the internet loves a shitstorm, Dragon.
Yeah.
Next time
it's so crazy. You know, I was gonna really quickly. People are funny. You know, I post on a friend's Twitter page about you know, something he was doing with his kids, saying, "Oh, that's great." You know, all of a sudden I get some guy accusing me of being a double agent for the government. Like,
Dude,
there it is. You know, and it's like they jump in on. I'm like, that doesn't have anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
Like, every time they do something, they start discovering something. You shut it down. Reeks of double agent. You know, and they're on. And I'm just like,
Welcome to the Fringe, Dragon.
I'm like, what does that have to do with me commenting on my buddy's kids making a team? I don't get that. So anyway,
you're trying to look like a person.
I'm on Twitter, you know, and I'll interact some if people are, you know, cool about it. So.
Dragon's on Twitter. He's also on the History Channel on a TV show, The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Check him out there, you guys, if you haven't seen it already.
Yeah,
and
I didn't even know we weren't on this past week until I got.
Neither did we.
Yeah, but I think we're back on Tuesday. So yeah, 9 Eastern on History Channel.
It's so awesome to have you here, Dragon, and you're welcome back anytime to talk about things. I would love to come up there to the ranch and check it out sometime. I know that's complicated, but Pete, tell everybody where they can find you, Pete.
Hey everybody, I'm Pete from the Creepy Little Book. You can find me right here on YouTube. I do a show every single night of the year, including holidays and weekends, where I delve into mysteries from the esoteric to the extraterrestrial, everything from the spiritual to the supernatural, and all that lies in between. You can find us at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, as well as 11 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, and sometimes, just sometimes, I squeak them in at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, too, because I don't sleep. I'm a strange man.
Go check out the Creepy Little
and get really like that. Hey, I'm Dragon.
Dude, I think he's probably the only one of us who's got the kind of microphone that can handle that kind of speech, dude. Do you see why I want him on our show, Michael?
Oh,
100%. Dude, we've got to get together. I know I keep saying that, but I'm glad I saw you face to face, Pete. Because I've got some ideas I want to run by you. But yeah, I'm Luis Jimenez. You can find my channel, Unidentified Celebrity Review, that I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday with Michael and sometimes Christina and Carl. So stop on by, and yeah, we have guests all the time. We talk about UAPs, UFOs, but we always bring it back to a terrestrial reality. So
Terra firma.
Terra firma. Yeah, I don't want to say terrestrial reality because that makes me sound like it's definitely human. It's definitely not human. Cool. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah,
guys.
and big guests coming on the Unidentified Celebrity Review all the time. So make sure and check out that channel. Christina, tell everybody what you've got going on. You got some new stuff over on your channel.
Yes. First, you can find me on Twitter at Eyes on the Skies, where I post a ton of really fascinating stuff. And every single Friday, I have a live cast called Shifting the Paradigm, where I interview UFO researchers and enthusiasts. And now I have a new show inspired by my friend Pete, Creepy Little Book, called Mysteries with a History, covering all kinds of mysterious topics, and they kind of just happen whenever they happen.
Definitely. So that's awesome. Yeah, check out.
But I'll also be doing outside boots on the ground research soon on camera, and I'm really excited because the weather is all nice. It's going to be really cool.
So you're going to be going out in the field looking for paranormal, Bigfoot, ancient mysteries, all kinds of hot spots.
Everything that I can.
It's going to be awesome. Michael, tell everybody about your show.
Christina is definitely getting sucked into a portal. I can guarantee you that. Yeah. There's no doubt.
No doubt. Maybe you might want to hire the Dragon for security while you go do that.
You might. I would recommend that highly.
I would highly recommend it.
Or nothing will happen. Nothing will happen if that's the case. She wants things to happen.
That's true.
Yeah, no digging though. No digging.
Yeah.
No digging.
Well, she's a scientific wizard, so I think she'll come back with some great stuff. My name is Michael Mataluni. You can follow me at the Singularity Lab here on YouTube. We focus on breaking technology, breaking science, and what is in store for humanity as we approach the technological singularity. I'm also Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Luis on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, and you can also find me on Twitter at Singularity Mike.
What an awesome show, you guys, and a great panel. And we did it all in an hour and 20 minutes. And so we're bringing it hot here on the Carl Vibe channel and going deep and digging into the mysteries and sharing our ideas with each other and not getting weird with it, but not weirded out. So having a lot of fun. And we're bringing the wizards this time, right? The mystics.
Well,
Bring the wizards.
Yeah.
Dragon
You guys-
agrees. Bring the wizards.
Yep.
Sounds awesome. You guys, thanks so much for joining the panel, and all of you over in the chat today. We read all your comments as much as we could. Appreciate you guys so much, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.